30 seconds and counting. 25 seconds and counting. We are still go. 20 seconds. Guidance alert. The guidance system now going internal. 15, 14, 13, 12, 11, 10, 9, 8. Ignition sequence start. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Good evening to viewers in Europe and Africa. Actually, we're approaching the morning here. Good afternoon to viewers throughout the Western Hemisphere. Good morning to viewers in the Pacific Rim. Welcome to the Angry Astronaut and to a very, very big moment for SpaceX. The first ever reuse of the Super Heavy booster and return to flight of Starship after 2.5 months of downtime, and hopefully rectifying the various things that have been contributing to problems. In the meantime, where's everybody checking in from? And thanks very much for watching, of course. Where's everybody watching from this evening? Or closing in on the morning in 13 minutes. It will be in the AM here in the UK, and it's already in the early morning on the continent. Hello, Missouri Ozarks. Thank you very much for watching today, Digital Revolution. Hey, Skywatcher, hope you're doing well. Hello, UK and Eastern Washington and Alberta, 4 Marks, UK. Hope you're doing well, John. Hello, New England and Tea Parties. Hello, Enfield and Houston, Texas, and Hungary, Hailing Island, and another Boston. Where else? You got Hailing Island? Okay, so I think that was 2. Antonym, thank you so much for your support, jumping on board right off the bat. Really, really appreciate that. Hello, Essex and Manchester. Hello, Iowa. Thanks very much for checking in. You familiar with a place called Sergeant Bluff? I had lots of friends from that region of Iowa. Hello, Manchester and Hailing Island again. Hello, Chesterfield and the Botelia. Andrew, he is big times on representing for Hailing Island. Hello, Boston. We got Blackpool and Queensland and Texas checking in on our vertical format. Hello, Hickory, North Carolina. Lots of furniture, at least used to be built in Hickory. I don't know if that's still the case, but I remember lots of furniture manufacturing going on there the last time I was in Hickory. Hello, Dublin, and hello, Titusville. Of course, everybody being familiar with Space Coast in Titusville. Hello, John, and thank you so much for the tenor. Boy, really helpful right now. Super appreciated. Hello, Switzerland. Hello, Sunshine Coast, Queensland. Hello, Birmingham on the shorts, and Florida. And hello, Adelaide. Really appreciate you checking. Hello, Syria. Thank you very much for watching today. And Clifton, Ireland. Hey, Damien. I hope you're doing well today. Hello, Manchester and Dublin and Leeds in the UK. And of course, Hailing Island. No explosions over the Caribbean this time. That would be super nice. Robert, thank you so much. Valdosta, also known as Airborne Bob, for his ongoing support of this channel. Dublin, Texas, and Georgia. And let's see, where else do we have checking in? Of course, our producer is in Wakefield in Yorkshire. Christchurch, New Zealand. Thanks very much, Sandra in Space, for checking in today. So we're getting close to being time to going live with SpaceX. I'm not sure if they're just showing a splash screen right now, but we're going to be bringing this to you. Obviously, this is a huge moment. The first reuse of the Super Heavy booster. Starship is little more than a great big expendable rocket if they can't get reusability to become a reality. And this will be the first effort to do that. Unfortunately, they're not going to try to catch the booster today. They're not going to that extreme. Instead, they're just going to try to reuse the booster once. I must confess, I'm slightly disappointed with that, although I understand that it would be super aggressive to not only try to lift off with the booster, with a reused booster, but trying to land with it at the same time. That would be a difficult thing to do, and perhaps a bit dangerous. And they've already had to double the size of the exclusion zone, in spite of the fact that SpaceX has claimed that their last anomaly did not send any debris outside of the exclusion zone. There was a vehicle on Flight 7 that was impacted by debris, by falling debris. This was confirmed by the FAA. So obviously some debris has been going outside of the exclusion zone. So they've doubled the size of it as far as airplanes avoiding that region. That's pretty much the main thing. And any sea traffic, any boats in the area as well are supposed to strictly avoid this region. So it is substantially larger than it was the last time. And there has been an expectation made. The expectation has been made that because of the reuse of this booster, there is an increased chance of an anomaly, perhaps even on liftoff. Let's hope that that's not the case. We never ever want to have an anomaly on liftoff. I would say the odds are very much in favor of things going well. But nevertheless, we're treading into unknown waters here, unexplored territory with the reuse of this booster, the reuse of Raptor engines. A Raptor engine has been reused before, but only one. We're trying to reuse a whole bunch of them here. And all of that is going to create an interesting situation. Okay, so here we go. SpaceX is on their splash screen at the moment. Producer, whenever you get a chance, if you could pipe in their audio as well to me. And here we go. We should be getting coverage very soon. No, not yet, producer. No audio yet. Thank you. Thank you. All right. So currently, like I say, we're just on the SpaceX splash screen. But yes, the reuse of we've got audio piped into me anyway. So that's pretty soon, unless there's a delay with the launch proceedings. Last we heard, there was a problem, or not a problem, but rather prop load was underway. Let's see if there's any sort of update on that. Nope. Prop load was still underway, and here we go. All right. So this has to go silent because of copyrighted music. So everything seems to be going as scheduled. We are on our way and approximately, I would say, 36 to 40 minutes away from liftoff at this point, given that they're going live right now. So, yeah. 35 minutes is what we're showing at the moment. 35 minutes to liftoff. So yeah, big moment coming for SpaceX. And we're waiting for their people to go live. So just waiting for this music to clear out. And here we go. Just a little over half an hour. And history may be made here. If this can happen, goes down properly, be by far the biggest booster that has ever been reused.
Manager at SpaceX.
And I'm Dan Hewitt with SpaceX Communications.
awesome to have you with us here in Texas. Jesse, welcome to Starbase. First time, right?
Thank you so much, Dan. Yeah, my first time here, and it is mind-blowing. I went out to the pad this morning, and the scale of the vehicle is just insane.
Dwarfs everything.
And for those of you watching at home, in case you missed the news, Starbase is no longer just a cool name. It is now officially an incorporated city in Texas, and we'll have more on that a little bit later today.
Yeah, right now, though, we are counting down to Starship's 9th flight test, currently targeting the very start of our window at 6:30 p.m. Central Time. Good news right up front, not tracking any issues with the vehicle. Weather is gorgeous out there right now. Rain this morning, little bit of wind, nothing now, nothing to worry about. Looking good for a launch.
Starship development is moving quickly here at Starbase. So fast, in fact, that we already are reflying the Super Heavy booster today, which last flew on Flight 7. The primary objectives for today are very similar to our last two attempts, except for the booster, which, in addition to flying for the second time, has an exciting return journey planned for its return back to Earth.
That's right. It's going to be getting some serious rigor, and pretty important, we are not going to be attempting to catch the booster today. We're going to use this launch to kind of further accelerate the development. We're putting Super Heavy kind of through the ringer, some serious rigor. We're going to go through all of that in just a couple of minutes. We're also hoping to get Ship into space, and it's got a couple of objectives like deploying simulated Starlink satellites and then a range of experiments during its reentry. We're really trying to test the limits, the capabilities of that heat shield, the flaps, the structure, everything about it. Primary payload on this flight, once again, as always, is data.
It's definitely a very big day for both stages. There's always a chance we don't reach every objective that we set for ourselves, but success comes from what we learn on days like today. And of course, whatever happens, excitement is guaranteed.
Yeah, that's right. Progress is not measured by single flight tests. It's whatever that timeline overall is, and getting us closer to establishing self-sustaining civilization on Mars, making life multiplanetary. Every time we're learning something from these flights that will get us there, that is progress.
Exactly. Starship is the first orbital launch vehicle engineered to be fully reusable and built for frequent flight and heavy payloads, just like today's commercial airliners.
It's the product of years of rapid development, testing, iteration. We're trying to fly as frequently as possible, fix problems as they appear, and then fly again. It all started here at Starbase back with Starhopper. It was a small single Raptor prototype. Kind of looked like a water tower. We turned it into a water tower eventually. It made its first low altitude hop back in 2019 here at Starbase. You could tell the pad, that's the pad that we were just looking at. It looks dramatically different now, two towers. But Starhopper delivered. It was able to prove that we could use that Raptor engine for controlled takeoff and landing.
And that is so wild to see that there on your screen was just 6 years ago, and now we're here today with a full-size vehicle. So from there, we moved to full-size test articles with increasingly complex test flights that reached progressively higher altitudes. And each test shaped the Starship that we see today on the pad, a stronger, taller, and more refined vehicle.
That's right. All right. Now, let's go out there and meet it. Starship is made up of two parts. First, on the bottom, the Super Heavy booster, powered by 33 Raptor engines. Both Super Heavy and Ship are running on liquid methane and liquid oxygen. That second stage, the Starship upper stage, is powered by 6 of those Raptor engines. 3 of them are optimized to sea level performance, 3 for vacuum, so operating while they're in space. And here's a quick look under the hood at all of those Raptors. On the left, that's a view from underneath the launch mount. That's 33 Raptor engines on the first stage, on the booster. And on the right, that's a view inside of the ship. So you're looking down at the top of the booster at 6 Raptor engines inside the ship. Those are what's going to power it to orbit. Now, that second stage is also what will one day carry cargo, payloads, people, everything that's going to space. It's also going to be responsible for in-space propellant transfer. That's where we're going to take 2 starships, meet them up in orbit. One will be able to transfer propellant to the other. That's a really critical capability for Starship to do all of these missions beyond low Earth orbit. That also unlocks our ability to send huge amounts of cargo, tremendous amounts of people to destinations far beyond Earth.
Yeah, the Super Heavy booster is designed to launch, separate, flip, and return to the launch site where it can be caught by the chopsticks on the launch tower. Though, as we mentioned earlier, we are not attempting a booster catch today on Flight 9. Starship re-enters the Earth's atmosphere at the conclusion of its mission, steering itself to a vertical landing or catch, and both stages are designed to return to Earth and fly again, making this the first rocket in history that will be fully reusable.
And then just in between the two vehicles is what's known as the hot stage ring. That's a steel structure that really takes the brunt of those ship engines as they ignite, protecting the booster while the ship's still attached to it. That enables us to do hot staging. It's faster, more efficient, kind of shutting everything down and then reigniting. Right now, that hot stage it's single use. It detaches from the booster as it flies back, but in the future, it's going to be integrated right into the top. And then on top of all of that, there's all of the infrastructure that's built up around it to support Starship. We call it Stage 0. That's everything, the launch pads, the propellant farm, launch towers, chopsticks that are catching the booster out of the air, stacking the ship, all of that. And you may have noticed we have a new addition out there near the pad. The orbital launch mount for Pad 2 has officially been installed. That's starting to come together. Just like Pad 1, Pad 2 has a launch mount. That's where you're going to put Super Heavy on top. We also have a launch tower with arms, a little bit shorter on that one. That's going to be used to stack the Starship on top, put the booster on top, catch the booster, catch the Starship. We did put the orbital launch mount on there. That's responsible for routing all of the propellant to the booster ahead of flight. Underneath it, you've got flame deflectors, the water deluge system to disperse all of those forces. The single piece we just lifted in weighs about 1,060 metric tons, which, if you're keeping score at home, that's the same weight as about 10 Millennium Falcons. It's heavy.
That's a lot of Millennium Falcons,
So
Dan.
many.
We're also currently in work on Starship's brand new pad at Kennedy Space Center's Launch Complex 39A, and we're hoping to bring that online later this year as well. Tons of progress with Starship so far in 2025, and lots of incredible milestones still coming up. And we are still on track to lift off tonight at 6:30 p.m. Central Time. And right now, it's time to say hi to Chris, who's over there repping the West Coast Ops today. How's it going, Chris?
Hey, Jesse and Dan, and welcome everyone to West Coast and Hawthorne, California. As you can see behind me, the crowd is gathering outside of our mission control room here in Hawthorne, and the excitement is really palpable as we continue to count down toward Starship's 9th flight test. Now, our mission control room here in Hawthorne usually serves as the mission control room for our Falcon and Dragon missions once they launch from Florida and California. Now, with Starship, all countdown and mission control operations actually use the same flight control team from the same location at Starbase, which you can see on your screen now. But as we develop a vehicle like Starship, we want as many experts watching over its various systems as we can. And that's what we use the mission control room here in Hawthorne for during Starship flight tests like today's. The folks in mission control, which you see now on your screen, are the responsible engineers for Starship's various systems. This includes things like booster systems, stage propellant, our ground stations, flight software, the loads, and the vehicle structures as well. And having this support gives the flight teams in Starbase immediate access to our engineers' knowledge, which is really, really important when we're making informed decisions very quickly in a test program like this. This setup has been great for Starship flight tests so far, as we've handled things like propellant temperature differences, as well as day of launch winds that can affect the loads placed on Starship structures during launch, and particularly during the descent of the Super Heavy booster back to Earth. So having all of these responsible engineers ready to support is crucial during Starship testing, where we place hardware in flight conditions quickly to iterate and make the best and most reliable rocket that we can. So it's definitely a full house, a growing full house here in Hawthorne for our 9th flight of Starship today. Every flight brings us a step closer to a future where Starship is flying multiple times a day. And I'm sure you all feel the same way down there in Texas, Dan and Jesse, but I can't wait to see Starship's launch today. How about you?
Yeah, can't wait to see it, Chris. As you can see, props loading on the vehicle is just a little under 2 miles away from us, and we're really excited. Looking back real quick, so back in March, Starship's 8th flight test saw us catch the Super Heavy booster for the 3rd time ever, another big step on that path to full and rapid reusability. Unfortunately, the Starship upper stage did experience what we call a rapid, unscheduled disassembly before it finished its climb to space, which meant we didn't reach all of those additional mission objectives that we had set.
About 5.5 minutes into ship's ascent burn, a hardware failure in one of its sea-level Raptor engines took out that engine, the 2 remaining sea-level engines, and a Raptor vacuum engine. That's 4 of the 6 engines that ship has. This was a different failure than we saw on Flight 7, and the fixes that we put in place did work as expected. So this was a new issue on Flight 8. So welcome to iterative engineering.
That's right. Losing hardware is a potential outcome of any test program. That's why we're always prepared with safety measures in place and also ready to have boots on the ground to assist with anything like debris cleanup. We can coordinate with all the necessary parties, organizations, administrations for safety in advance and in an ongoing basis during our test campaigns to plan for as many possible outcomes. Definitely do want to say thank you, though, to the people of the Bahamas, the government of the Bahamas, who worked with us so closely since Flight 8.
We took full responsibility for the cleanup, and in doing so, we had people on the ground in the Bahamas within 12 hours to help with debris recovery. So all that said, we're moving forward in our development cycle with safety at the top of mind, and we fly again today to get this current iteration of ship to space and back.
That's right. Putting hardware in a flight environment as frequently as possible, so you're seeing how things behave all together in the real world. Then you're solving problems as they pop up. That's how SpaceX developed their very first rocket, Falcon 1. Same philosophy was used to develop Falcon 9.
Today, we're looking to get our first re-entry with the latest iteration of ship while intentionally stressing the Super Heavy vehicle during its return to get data on its boundaries. And by stressing, we mean that we'll be pushing the flight envelope of Super Heavy as we fly at a higher angle of attack during descent towards the Gulf. Angle of attack in this case means that Super Heavy is pitched up to maximize drag and slow return. Because of this test, we will not be attempting to catch and recover Super Heavy, which again is flying for its second time today. So for a brief moment, this booster will hold the title as the Super Heavy flight leader.
That's right. All right. Lot still ahead for today. Let's get into it real quick with this overview. As always, everything starts with a liftoff. 33 Raptor engines igniting. Super Heavy pushing itself and Starship into ascent over the Gulf. It's going to continue for about 2.5 minutes before we get to hot staging. Ship will ignite its engines. Booster will do its boost back burn and begin its flight experiments back for a hard splashdown in the Gulf of America. Meanwhile, ship continues its burn into space.
And ship will remain suborbital. We will be deploying 8 Starlink simulator satellites and then head towards re-entry. We'll relight a Raptor engine as well as test experiments during re-entry, such as missing tiles, metallic tiles, loading the vehicle's flaps, and then ship will attempt a flip maneuver. And if all goes planned, we'll conclude the test with a soft water splashdown in the Indian Ocean. So that's what we have on the menu for Flight 9 today.
Whole lot.
Flight 8's RUD taught us new lessons about Starship hardware, specifically the Raptor engines. And as we touched on earlier, the root cause was traced to a hardware failure in one of Starship's 3 center Raptor engines.
Yeah, just since that flight, we've done more than 100 long-duration Raptor tests at our facility in McGregor. Huge shout out to that team for really putting in the work to better understand what happened. As a result, the engines that are on Starship's upper stage on the pad right behind us have a few changes. One of the key ones we did was additional preload on some of the joints, essentially some additional torquing, a new nitrogen purge system for the engines themselves, and made some improvements to the propellant drain system.
After our first ever Super Heavy refurb campaign, we static fired with all 33 Raptor engines. This was a chance to see all the hardware operating together, and for this flight, our teams had an opportunity to make adjustments or hardware replacements for this first ever reflight of the Super Heavy booster.
And then it was ship's turn. We took it through several static fires. First, we did this short duration single engine burn to simulate an in-space reignition of Raptor using those header tanks, those smaller tanks up in the nose cone. We also completed a longer duration 60-second burn with all 6 engines. So where you're really putting the entire propulsion system that's going to be used for the ship's ascent into space through the paces, making sure everything's working together before we go stack it on the pad.
And in the end, these changes represent the core of our test program. And reflying a booster for the first time is a major milestone, especially so early in the flight test program. Now, Falcon did it in just over 30 flights.
And Starship's doing it today on just its 9th flight. It's not wild just because of how much faster that is, but just how much bigger Starship is. Falcon 9 can lift about 23 metric tons into orbit. Starship is designed to lift 200.
That is so exciting. And on top of that, we're also reflying Engine 314 for its 3rd flight, which you might recall is the engine with a pie on the nozzle. And there you could see that engine there. It is a milestone, most definitely, but we do remain focused on getting to the point where no refurbishment is needed between any of the flights.
Yeah, that means we want to launch it, bring it back, look at it, reload propellants, go again. That is really what's key. That is what full and rapid reusability will look like.
All right. So we've got more copyrighted music going on here. So yeah, looking super exciting. Again, very interesting to hear the optimism coming from these folks. I'll politely put it as optimism. They talk about 200 metric tons to orbit. If they can manage to get 100 metric tons, it will be a massive accomplishment for any rocket. 100 tons would be a massive thing. Up to this point, they haven't even come close to approaching 100 metric tons with the current prototype design. Of course, they've got some improvements to make, and one of the big improvements is the Raptor 3, which unfortunately we're not reflying today. So in any event, yeah, still I'm just as excited as the rest of these folks are. Producer, please let me know when the copyrighted music is complete. And Rodney, thank you so much for your support. Really, really appreciate it. Believe it or not, guys, I was actually seriously considering showing up to this launch when it looked like it was going to happen last week. But unfortunately, not happening now. So they kept pushing it out, and I had to get back to the UK, if for no other reason, for medical reasons. So. But Rodney, thanks very much for jumping on board like that. Makes a big difference. So yeah, huge moment coming, guys, with this. Once again, reusing the booster for the first time. This is a massive milestone to undertake. And let's hope that everything goes well. Let's hope that we don't have a pad anomaly or an anomaly just over the pad, though that is the scenario that everybody's been afraid of. Let's keep our fingers crossed on that, and let's get back to SpaceX.
Now.
That's right. Looking at our levels real quick, we're a little bit more than halfway full on fuel and LOX on the booster, over 80% full on the ship, so we'll have to fill those header tanks. But everything looking good. We're not tracking any issues on the range. As a reminder, we watch sea states, air, and land around the launch site here, and also over in the Indian Ocean where we're going to be doing our reentry. Not tracking any blockers to launch at the moment. Weather is gorgeous, has not been a concern all day for launch. We've been moving through all of our pre-flight checkouts pretty smoothly so far this morning, getting the ship and the booster ready for prop load, making sure guidance, navigation, and control are aligned. Everything's ready to go. You can see with the frost coming off, we're getting pretty full. We started loading all of the propellants on board both ships about 45 minutes or so before launch. They kind of stagger where we start with ship and then move into booster. We're going to continue loading these propellants on board until just about 3 minutes before liftoff. We'll close out on the ship first and then on the booster. But bottom line, everything's looking great. Not tracking any vehicle issues, range issues, weather issues. We're looking really good right now for a launch at the top of our window right at 6:30 p.m. Central.
Yeah, seeing the propellant loading is making this getting more and more exciting. Today is going to be a wild ride for Super Heavy. We're putting the booster through several tests to expand the envelope on its capabilities and get flight data to make its return and catch more reliable. Now, another unique change in today's flight will be the addition of the first ever directional flip of the booster.
That's right. If you followed previous flights and you kind of wonder to yourself, why does the direction of the booster flip seem random? Surprise, it's because it was. We've got a couple of views from previous flights where you'll see the booster kind of go in different directions, and it was really small differences in the thrust of those ship engines. As they started up, they would nudge the booster in an initial direction, and so the booster would essentially sense that and then lean into it, and it'll react, the engines will gimbal, and then it'll continue the flip. That was the easiest option technically, but you do take some performance hits since you're essentially setting aside propellant to accommodate every single direction for a flip.
Exactly, but if we know which direction we're flipping, then we know how much propellant we will need and can instead use more of the propellant to burn longer during ascent, adding more velocity to ship and increasing how much payload it can ultimately deliver to space.
Yeah, so today I got my trusty Super Heavy here. We're going to intentionally try to flip straight up. So as you're separating from the ship, we want to get to here as you're doing that boost back burn. The fastest way is to just flip straight up and go into it. That's roughly what we did on Flight 5. It's the most direct way to get into that orientation for the boost back burn. What you don't want to do is when you flip all the way down like that, we did that on Flight 7, it takes you in a big loop, uses the most amount of prop, not efficient. We're at the point where we want to start kind of tuning it in and getting some extra performance out of the booster.
Yeah, exactly. That's called optimization.
That's right.
To accomplish this, we made some changes to the hot stage adapter, welding reinforced panels over the vents in the direction that we want the booster to go. So when the ship engines ignite, the thrust will push against the blocked vents, which means that the nudge will be in the direction that we planned for. And then when we go to the next generation of ship and booster, we plan to control the flip direction by fine-tuning the engine startup sequence on the ship.
Yeah, that's not the only flight experiment that we have planned for the booster today. We're not attempting a catch, so we're going to try and gather additional data that's going to improve performance on future boosters. We're also going to try and see how resilient we are to things like losing an engine during the landing burn. By sending the booster out to sea, we're able to do these higher risk tests without risking the launch pad. As you might have heard earlier, we're going to be doing what's called a higher angle of attack. Basically, instead of coming straight down, we're going to tilt up a little bit. That gets you more drag on the booster. You're able to use just aerodynamic forces to slow you down. The slower you're going at the start of that landing burn, the less propellant you need, because really you're just focused on slowing down as much as humanly possible when you fire that up. So by already going a little bit slower, we'll get some benefits to our performance and our reliability on those burns.
Yeah, exactly. And there's definite uncertainty in how well the booster's grid fins and structure will be able to control its flight when we get into higher angles. So don't be surprised if it isn't a smooth descent for the booster down to its splashdown point today. The most important objective of this portion of the test will be getting actual flight data to help anchor our models. Now, we're hoping to fly the next generation of Super Heavy boosters at even higher angles of attack. So this test today will give us a better idea of what is feasible. Now, on top of all of this, we're going to see how resilient Super Heavy is to engine failures at the most critical times.
Yeah, we're going to intentionally disable one of those 3 center engines and instead use an engine from the middle ring that's kind of right behind it. Those center engines are what we nominally use at the very last part of a landing burn as you're just kind of fine-tuning the booster's path into those waiting chopstick arms. This is going to act as a real-world simulation of a pretty scary situation where engines are not starting at probably the worst possible time, but we're going to do this without risking the pad. And then, at the very end of the landing burn, we're going to cut one more engine off and go down to only those 2 center engines. The burn is going to end while Super Heavy is still several hundred feet above the Gulf, so we expect it to make a pretty hard splashdown today. So, in all, pretty eventful day for the booster.
And as many of you may know, water landings are actually uncommon for SpaceX. While other launch providers expend all of their boosters after flight, we land and reuse most of ours. All of these tests are going to help us improve future generations of Super Heavy until we reach its fundamental design, a fully and rapidly reusable and reliable rocket. All right, let's check back in with Chris in Hawthorne. How's it going, Chris?
Hey, Jesse, my colleagues here in Hawthorne definitely agree with you. We can't wait to see the Super Heavy perform its second flight and see all of the work from our thousands of engineers and technicians in action today. Now, while this reuse milestone is incredibly important for Starship's development, Super Heavy boosters are not the only vehicles that we reuse here at SpaceX. We're big on reuse, and our Dragon fleet is another example of that reuse. And we actually control those Dragon missions from right here in Hawthorne in the mission control room that we talked about a little bit earlier. For Dragon and our human spaceflight program, this month also marks a big milestone for SpaceX, our 5-year anniversary of human spaceflight. Now, NASA astronauts Bob Behnken and Doug Hurley got us started back on Demo 2, which was notable for being the first time since the retirement of the shuttle program in 2011 that people launched to orbit from U.S. soil. Now, in those 5 years, we have launched 17 human spaceflight missions, 11 for NASA, and 6 commercial missions, including Polaris Dawn, with our first commercial spacewalk in history, and From 2 earlier this year, which became the first human spaceflight mission ever to explore Earth's polar regions. We've flown a total of 66 crew in those 5 years, and we are expecting that number to grow significantly in the coming years. Now, most recently on our From 2 mission, the crew offered unique glimpses into the orbital spaceflight experience. And this was honestly just so cool to see. Thank you to our Starlink teams for making everything with the From 2 crew shared possible. This honestly made me feel like I was right there with them in Dragon. They were living, they were working, they were relaxing, they were doing their experiments while also having fun. Basically, just being people and inviting us along for the ride. And that was really meaningful. Being invited up there really showed how these are just the early days on the road to making life multiplanetary. And the vehicle that's going to make all of that happen is Starship. And Dan and Jesse, I don't know about you, but that is definitely a future I have wanted since I was a little kid, and I cannot wait to see us make it a reality.
Yeah, right there with you, Chris. It's the fact that we're getting close to that being reality, that the vehicle that's going to go is sitting on the pad right there. Like, that's endlessly exciting. All of that's going to include sending humans, all of the infrastructure for a permanent presence on Mars. And we're looking ahead to sending the very first Starships to Mars as early as next year.
Yeah, this will help prove that we can actually get to Mars with a focus on learning as much as possible while demonstrating what will be needed for Mars transit and landing. But before we can make life multiplanetary, we have to build the starships that will make this all possible.
That's right. And that's happening right here, Starbase, Texas, the gateway to Mars. This is where we're soon going to be launching up to 25 Starship launches per year from here at Starbase. And the place is changing every single day. We've grown quite a bit just in the last couple of years. There's a couple hundred employees, their families living amongst actual rockets. We're in the process of expanding production and integration. We've got a target of 1,000 Starships a year we're going to try to hit. And recently, we did become a city of our own. We're the first city in Cameron County in 30 years. And that's just going to help us scale more quickly, try to build out the best community possible for all the people that are building the future of humanity's place in space. Starbase, pretty easily one of the most inspiring, exciting, unique places to live and work on the planet. As usual, shameless plug, we're always hiring. Come help us build the gateway to Mars. Visit SpaceX.com/careers. You can see all of our openings.
And this is my first time in Starbase. And Dan, the Star Factory is a manufacturing engineer's dream. To be able to build a factory like this at such a large scale with such a large scale vehicle is so wild to me. And though I'm just visiting, Chris is hanging out right where I call home base. So let's check back in with Chris in Hawthorne.
Thanks, Jesse. Yeah, everything here in Hawthorne is looking good. The crowd is gathered, really excited to watch the hard work of all of their colleagues come to fruition here for Starship on its 9th flight test. Not tracking any issues. We are excited to watch Starship do its thing today, make it halfway around the world, and test a lot of those critical in-space maneuvers and operations that will be vital for the program's continued operation. So Dan and Jesse, we can't wait for liftoff. Let's have a good flight today.
Thanks, Chris. Now, if you're just now joining us, where have you been? But we're glad that you're joining us now. We are at T-minus just under 6 minutes until liftoff of the 9th Starship test flight. So far, the range is looking good. All the airspace and trajectory area that we are going to be launching through is looking good for our test flight today. Weather has been great. It was a little rainy and windy this morning, but it cleared up. It looks beautiful here in Starbase, and propellant loading continues on both stages.
All right, yeah, it is continuing. We're a little over 90% full on our booster. We are pretty much full in the main tanks on ship, filling up those header tanks. We're going to continue loading prop for about 2 more minutes. Once we're done with that, you've got just under 11 million pounds of liquid propellant spread across those 2 stages. After we get through all of that prop load, our stage 0 will get ready. The ground systems will go through pushbacks, clearing all of those fluid feed lines back to the propellant farm, getting ready for launch. We did just see they did a flap wiggle check, so the final flap check on the ship. We're doing final alignments of the guidance, navigation, and control system, our thrust vector control, essentially our steering, checkouts of the flight safety system. So everything progressing right now. If we do need to hold, that can come at T-minus 40 seconds. That's a point built into the countdown where we can pause to wait for any final checkouts, pressurizations, anything that we need to complete. We can hold there. We will only hold there if we're tracking an issue. We're not currently tracking anything that will hold us at T-minus 40 seconds. But if you've seen a Starship launch before, they can happen. We can push through them and then launch that day still.
Exactly. But when we do pass through T-minus 40 seconds, a number of events will occur in rapid succession. The ground spin and ignition systems come up to flight pressure, ship goes to internal power, and then after that, the quick disconnect or QD, arm lockout is removed in preparation for retraction just shortly after T-minus 0. And once we pass T-minus 40 seconds, we do still have the ability to recycle the count under certain conditions back to T-minus 40 seconds, and then hold there to assess what happened and see if we can proceed again back down to T0.
Yeah. There are a couple of things, kind of gates in that timeline that if we pass through that and we hit a hold, we'd have to scrub for the day. One pretty visual one will be if the water starts flowing for that deflector system that's underneath the launch mount. That happens right at around T-minus 10 seconds. For flowing water, we can't turn it off after it starts, and if we hit a hold, we're scrubbed for the day. We would need to refill those water tanks. We would also, at that point, need to refill all of the propellant tanks, as 11 million pounds of propellant is a whole lot. We can typically do that in about 24 hours, so we can always turn around to try again tomorrow. But we are coming up on 3 minutes away from liftoff. We should be hearing that we're closed out of prop load on the ship at this point. Booster coming up shortly.
And wow, the weather just looks amazing there with Starship on the launch pad. Just about 2 minutes and 45 seconds from T0 with a lot of objectives for today. The booster, the Super Heavy booster flying today, will be flying for its 2nd time. Last flight was on Flight 7 and just turned around in 2 flights, which is pretty incredible. I'm super excited to see that booster fly again.
All right, we did just hear we are going to hold at T-minus 40 seconds. So we'll pass along some more information once we hear that reason. But again, that's not the end of the day. We can hold at T-minus 40 seconds for quite a few minutes. We eventually have to start looking at our temperature of all of our propellant on board. That's usually what drives us to, if we've held too long, we have to stand down for the day. So we are expecting a hold at T-minus 40 seconds. Sounds like we're going to be doing some additional checkouts on the booster Raptor while we're at that T-minus 40 second mark. So we will expect to see the clock pause at T-minus 40. And then again, we've got a couple of minutes. They can work through the issues. If we're able to clear them, we can still launch today. If it's something that we can't, we can always stand down, turn around, recycle, fly again tomorrow.
Again, that's really important. This is what terminal count is exactly for, is to be checking the vehicle, monitoring the vehicle systems as it makes its way down to T0. And again, this gives us the ability to catch anything and be able to hold, as Dan has been saying, and recycle if we need to, or pause so that we can work through those issues and see if it's something that we need to stand down for. And as Dan mentioned, we will be holding at T-minus 40 seconds, so in about 20 seconds from now.
Yeah, so we'll hold there, and they'll work through these final checkouts on, sounds like just one of those Raptors on the first stage on Super Heavy, which as you said, we're reflying it for the first time. 29 of those 33 engines have already been used in a launch, one of which has
We're at
already
the 40-second
launched
hold, guys.
Twice,
And
and
just
we'll
so you
go
know, they
for
and
can't
is getting
do
ready
this
for his
terribly
third time.
long
And you just
because
heard our
of-
flight
for
director for the
propellant,
day,
keeping all the propellant
Joe
properly
Sliker.
chilled.
He just
But
shared
in
that we are going to
addition
hold
that,
at this
they
T-minus
also
40-second
have
mark. Keep an eye on one of those
lot
Raptor engines
of
on booster.
flights interdicted right now. There is double the size of previous test flights on this launch. Double the size of the exclusion zone. There's a lot of flights in the Caribbean that cannot go through this exclusion zone for as long as we're counting down towards this launch, which means there's only so much time that
And
they're going to commit.
if you're just now jumping
to
in, we are
doing this
holding
before
still
they
at
have to
T-minus
scrub for the
40
day. So
seconds.
there are a number of factors
Watching one
contributing
engine, waiting for temperatures to kind
to
of
SpaceX
get to
having
a zone that we want
keep
them
this
to on one of the
40-second
engines
hold down
on
to a
the
minimum.
booster, on the Super Heavy booster, getting ready for its second ever flight. We'll just continue to hold. Again, we can hang out here for several minutes. We held for a while on the first attempt last time and then cleared it, and then we triggered a different issue on the ground side.
But again, this is exactly what it's for. This gives us the best chances at success.
Here we go. They
And the
rolled the
clock is
clock,
rolling.
guys. They're going for
we
it.
go.
Now they are committed.
All right. T-minus 30. Let's listen in.
Godspeed, Starship.
Watch
We're
that
gonna
first
go
flight
full screen
proven
now.
Super Heavy.
Flight directors go
Get
for
ready to
SpaceX,
take off from
Go
Starbase.
Starship.
T-minus. Delta 1. Hit hold.
We're back
We
on
did have
hold,
a
guys.
hold,
Something
and looks
happened.
like the clock jumped back to T-minus 40 seconds.
Back to the 40-second hold point. Something happened here. Haven't seen a lot of this.
All right,
lately.
so
This
we
is
jumped down.
A bit odd.
I did not see the deflector go off. So hopefully we were right at around that T-minus 10-second mark.
And if we were before that T-minus 10-second mark, we do have the ability to recycle, as we mentioned earlier, back to T-minus 40 seconds.
So it looked like this time it was a ground side issue. We're taking a look at this real quick. So again, we're back at T-minus 40. We're gonna hold for a little bit. We are still not scrubbed for the day. Give them a couple of minutes to work through this. Again, we can hang out at T-minus 40 for several minutes. Eventually, we start looking at your bulk temperatures and
More
all
than
of your
half of
propellant
the
on board the
poll
vehicle.
responses
We're not
say that
actively
this is gonna be a
replenishing
nominal
the
flight.
propellant on board Super Heavy and Starship. And so you don't have essentially
A lot
forever
of
to hang
confidence
out
here.
before things start to warm up. And you do want to make sure your temperature's in a really stable range for a healthy startup on Raptor engines. So they're going to work through this issue. We can continue to hold here for a couple of minutes. What's launch without a little extra added excitement? All right, so cumulatively, we've held for a little over 3 minutes between the two holds. Again, this is a ground side issue on our tower. The techs are looking through the data right now to see if it's something that we can either work through or if it would cause us to have to stand down. So we're continuing to hang out with them, holding at T-minus 40.
Tower-related issues, what it sounds like. I'm not seeing venting from the booster yet, so potentially still go.
If you're just joining us, we did initially hold at T-minus 40 seconds. We continued the count, but recycled before we got to T-minus 10 seconds. And so we're back at a hold at T-minus 40 seconds. Waiting for more information. The team is checking out to see
Got
if
over
we
800
can
people watching
continue
between
today.
the two streams, guys. Thanks for tuning in today. It's a big, big event in space flight, assuming they can get it off the ground today. If not, we'll have to restart tomorrow. Probably a lot of uncertainty about this reused booster. They're trying to be super careful about this.
We're continuing
A
to
pad
hold here at
anomaly
T-minus
would be
40
utterly
seconds.
disastrous.
We've been
They
holding
can't
for
have
just
that.
about 5 minutes now as the teams evaluate if we can continue to T0 for Flight 9.
All right, so it sounds like we're coming to a resolution. All right, so we are getting to a resolution. We're going to reset everything.
They may push forward here, guys. They may push forward. Yeah, they're not recycling. We'll see. We'll see.
All right, so we're going to see the clock.
Clock is
It
rolling
now
again, guys.
rolling.
Here we go. Here we go, folks.
Here we go.
We saw an issue
are
with that
underway.
quick disconnect to the ship. There is a chance that automation will kick us out again if we encounter the same issue. But for now, the clock is rolling.
Godspeed,
We'll
Starship.
see if we pass
Let's
around that
go.
T-minus 10-second mark.
First attempt to reuse the biggest booster in human history. Big moment here, guys. Here we go. Here we go, baby. Wow. Looked like it took a little while. Lift off. Spectacular.
Booster rapid fuel pressure nominal.
T plus
Booster and
40
ship,
seconds.
avionic
It's
power,
one
telemetry
hell of a
nominal.
sight from here. We see it arcing right over top of us. We see 33 out of 33 Raptor engines lit on
Beautiful.
Super Heavy as it starts to ascend
it doesn't
skyward.
look any more beautiful than that. Stunning. Look at those engines go.
Coming up on maximum aerodynamic pressure, then only
Max
about a
Q.
minute
Max
and a
Q.
half until we get
Past
into
max
hot
Q
staging.
now. Come on, baby. Let's go.
Wow, Dan, that was incredible. We could feel the
going.
building shaking here, feel the vehicle's power. Now we're just about a minute away from shutting down those engines on the booster. Again, this booster is flying for its second
So
time
impressive.
today.
All right, so hot staging coming up a little under a minute. We're going to see all but the 3 center engines turn off on the booster. So our version of
baby,
MECO,
go.
most engines cut off. And then just a few seconds later, hoping to see 6 engines ignite on ship.
Okay, main
to
engine
push it
cutoff
away.
is coming up, and we have a hot stage separation as well here.
All right, hot staging, about 30 seconds.
That's impressive.
And definitely keep an eye on which way the booster flips. First ever directional flip we're going for today. Should flip straight
Looks
up.
like it's, pitching over.
See those engines powering down?
Main engine
Booster
cutoff.
engine cutoff.
Main engine cutoff, guys.
Ship ignition.
Now stage
Stage
separation
separation.
going.
incredible
very good
flip by
on
Super Heavy Booster. And you can
orbiter
see those
as
6
well.
engines, those 3 engines on the ship ignited.
6 healthy Raptors running on ship on its way to space. Peek that engine view. Booster doing
Very
a boost
impressive
back.
indeed.
Chris, how's it looking over there in Hawthorne, man?
So far, so
It
good.
is looking
Raptor, chamber pressure is nominal.
It is looking absolutely incredible
there
here in
goes.
Hawthorne. As we said, 6 healthy engines on ship. We've got 13 out of 13 engines on the booster. Now down to those 3, which is what we expect in the final moments of the boost back burn.
Everything
Now,
is
as a
looking
reminder, we
quite
are not
good
recovering
on
the
the
super
skirt
heavy booster
compared
today.
to
We are instead
previous
going to do
Booster
some.
boost 5, shut down.
And there we had a good shutdown of the boost back
We
burn.
have our
Next up will be the
hardworking
jettison
team
of that
members
hot stage
Ship
ring.
avionics
watch
power
on
and
all of
telemetry
this.
nominal.
And making
Great call out there that
comparisons.
everything looking nominal aboard
So
the super
far,
heavy
it's
vehicle,
looking
which is
quite
returning to
good.
Earth, and we're going to be doing some experiments with it, including a higher angle of attack re-entry, as well as some engine tests as it gets closer to the Gulf. We are, again, because of these tests not recovering it, we are sending it to the Gulf on purpose to do those tests. But again, you see the booster on the left-hand side of your screen. You see ship with 6 healthy engines continuing
This is
its
looking
ascent to
very
its
good
planned
indeed.
suborbital trajectory. Everything going very well so far for Starship's 9th flight. Now 4 minutes, 15 seconds in. Great views from inside of the aft engine area of ship there, looking at those 3 sea level and 3 Raptor engines on the right-hand side of your screen. The booster doing its LOX dump, that liquid oxygen dump. So because we don't need some of that liquid oxygen propellant in its tanks, we vent that propellant out to lessen the booster's mass as it comes in for its landing. Just absolutely gorgeous
so
views
good,
watching
guys.
these 2 vehicles do their respective things in the skies over Texas here today. And Dan, we're approaching the 5-minute mark into the flight. Super Heavy is descending rapidly. What can we expect here in the next few minutes as it does its
Nominal
atmospheric
trajectory.
tests?
Yeah, now as we had talked about, Super
Bit
Heavy
of an
might not have a
odd
very smooth ride down.
something
We're going to be putting it
on
through
the
this higher
left-hand
angle of
side
attack.
of the
We're
skirt.
kind of pitching
Again,
it up a
this-
tiny bit,
this
increasing
could be
drag.
normal.
We've done this in wind tunnels. We've done this
Curious
in
what we're looking
computer
at
modeling.
here.
It shows
I
that
don't know if
sometimes
that's a
the
fuel
control
leak.
isn't great,
Although it seems to be,
but
I
only
don't
one
know.
way to really prove it out,
Hard
and
to
that's to
say
get
for sure
real
what's
world
going
data.
on
So
with
here
the
comes
orbiter.
Super Heavy.
I think that's.
It
I
should
don't
be igniting for
I don't know
its
if we can
landing burn in just
I don't know if we have.
about 40 seconds from now.
Okay.
And we are going to relight 13 engines, then bring that down to 3 engines. As we talked about earlier, we will be intentionally
Booster
shutting
FPS
down.
saved.
We will be shutting down one of those 3 center engines intentionally
Here we
to
go.
push the limits of the Super Heavy booster.
Ship Raptor, chamber pressure is nominal.
And continuing to see 6 healthy engines on the ship, 3 sea level and 3 vacuum engines still ignited as the Super Heavy booster is making its way back down to Earth.
We can see those grid fins doing some heavy
Oof.
work.
Booster landing startup.
Ignited for our landing burn.
Got an engine out on the booster. No. Yeah, I don't know. Let's see. I don't know.
It may have ended with that landing burn. Does look like we lost telemetry from the booster once
Telemetry
we started
lost
into
from the
that landing
booster.
burn.
During the landing
Did you
burn.
see confirmation that the booster
There was,
did demise?
near as we could tell, there was a fire under the skirt.
So
as
the
they were
booster's flight
attempting
ending before
a
it was able to
landing
get through
burn.
landing burn. But
So
again, we're not
wise
bringing
not
that back.
to
We're
attempt to
expecting it
catch.
to make a hard splashdown in the Gulf.
So in any
We
event,
were getting live data
at least
back
the booster
the entire time
did
through that high angle of attack
send
flight.
the
So
orbiter,
that was something that
send
was
Starship
really
into
vital for us
space.
to get
That's
during
a huge
this reuse.
accomplishment there, but unfortunately,
First free flight of booster in the
obviously,
books.
still work
All
needs
right,
to
ship.
be done on the booster to get full
There's about 2 minutes
reusability
left.
out of it. But still, can't take anything away from the accomplishment
In about 2
of the
minutes,
fact that
we
it put
expect all 6
this
Raptor
huge
engines
rocket
to
into
shut
space.
down. That will be SECO, basically second engine or second stage engine shut off. And these are some incredible views, Dan, from the aft end of the ship, watching as the engines stay ignited with the Earth in the background.
as always, the Starship Avionics team, the techs.
Things looking very good for the orbiter this time.
I think we just heard the booster. But all right, we got about a minute left into this burn. All eyes definitely on ship as we get through the final stages into its ascent. We're expecting it to start to cut those engines off in about 45 seconds.
Yeah, if there were any leaks or any problems under the skirt before, I think it probably
Terminal
just a
guidance.
function of the engines. I'm not seeing any problems now.
All right, just about 30 seconds to go. We're in terminal guidance in the final stages of this ascent burn.
Okay. And a team member
did
has
see
still
shutdown of
observed
the Raptor
some
engines.
gases escaping.
We
the
do
top
stagger
left.
these, so we do the Raptors first. Those 3 have shut down successfully. Sea levels still running.
All right.
Ship
Got
engine
full
cut off.
at this point. So now Starship will continue on its orbital trajectory, well, suborbital trajectory, in an attempt to set down in the Indian Ocean.
Ship engine
Nominal
cut off,
insertion.
the 3 most beautiful words in the English language.
And great call out that we had nominal
good.
insertion. An incredible flight test so far today.
All right, folks. So we are going to keep you updated on the progress of this suborbital trajectory that will take the orbiter towards an attempted landing in the Indian Ocean. But a good accomplishment. Boy, I don't know. I keep thinking I'm seeing things going on with the orbiter, but again, that just may be imagination on my part. It's hard to say for certain if there are any problems, but so far I would say things are looking pretty good. It's almost like we're expecting something to go wrong. It looks like we're getting a pitch. Uh-oh. The orbiter may be pitching, guys, and you can see that because of the shadow. The way the shadow is twisting around. Hard to say for certain, but it could be that the orbiter is pitching. Hard to say. Fingers crossed here, guys. I don't know. The way the shadow was creeping around indicates that, but again, that could be RCS thrusters in operation, just steadying the trajectory. We'll see. I don't know. Okay, it's pitching around for a deployment, actually, is what may be the case here. Because yes, there's definitely some pitching going on with the vehicle, but then that may be expected because we're attempting to do satellite deployment. Boy, that looks weird. Again, it's hard to say if this is as intended or not. And I'd say the reason we're so worried about this is because we've seen things go wrong so many times now. Just some gorgeous, gorgeous, boy, it's curious. Again, we've got the shadow creeping around, and we see the sun in motion. Again, that just could be because of how the that could be by design, but it's just hard to say. It looks very different from some of the suborbital flights that we've seen in the past. Fingers crossed, guys. Hard to say for sure. So far, the commentators don't seem to are not suggesting that there's anything wrong. So this may be as expected. This may be by design, but it does look a bit different from the suborbital flights that we've seen from Starship in the past, and there shouldn't be anything different about this flight from previous ones because it's heading for the same destination, except perhaps for payload deployment. So we'll see. By the way, I want to say thank you very much to all the support that we have received thus far on this broadcast, all the likes and all the folks who are watching, and also the very generous support of Super Chat folks today. It's been enormous. And let me tell you, it is this kind of support that allows me to do the things that I do. Okay, so here we go. They had to pitch around to open up a payload deployment door. So all of this may have been by design, guys. And that's what makes this different than previous flights, is to get the orbiter into position to deploy. Up, hold on. Did we just saw some sort of venting as if maybe the deployment was imminent? Again, these are dummy Starlink satellites. These are not. Check it out. Very interesting. So all of that maneuvering may have been just to get Starship into position for payload deployment. We might have nothing else going on here. So stay tuned, folks. Got over 850 people watching, folks. Really, really appreciate it. Thank you. All right, so we're almost 16 minutes into flight. Again, they're focusing a lot on these dummy Starlink satellites. So once again, any concern that we might have had before might very well just be in regards to Starship shifting its position for payload deployment. So probably ice crystals, a lot of them, for those of you asking what those things are. Got ice crystals. Yeah, and there's electrostatic forces that are impacting it. Of course, there's no wind in space, but these things may be ionized. And so you have an electrostatic fields changing the trajectory of these little fragments. The same principles, by the way, that will perhaps eventually work on plasma engines, utilizing ionized plasma and electromagnetic forces to direct an ionized plasma thrust, which, by the way, has a much, much higher delta V and capability and a much higher ISP than chemical engines. So some point in the future. Yeah, and this is something we need to keep in mind also is how the hell are we going to sterilize Starship? This is something that Ron Levin up. They are not going to be able to deploy. No deployment possible on this flight. I mean, it's great that we've got this thing into suborbital flight with the reused booster. You can't take anything away from that, but we do have some disappointments in this flight so far, with the booster being lost after its first reuse. And now the fact that the payload deployment appears to have been scrubbed. That's a little disappointing as well. Because once again, if you're talking about Mars next year, which I continue to say is impossible, if you're talking about Mars next year, you can't do Mars without low Earth orbit refueling. You need at least 10 refueling missions in order to get Starship refueled sufficiently to attempt a Mars landing. So if payload deployment is still creating issues right now, then that doesn't bode well for trying to do things as complicated as low Earth orbit refueling in the next year or so. Now to be clear, I'm sure that they're eventually going to get this. They are eventually going to master the entire process, no doubt in mine. But I think that right. And just so you know, right now, SpaceX commentary has dropped off, and there's copyrighted music playing on the stream. So, in any event, yeah, the a Mars mission in 2026 seems, especially in regards to the results of this flight, seems completely impossible. There's just too many hurdles to be jumped. But nevertheless, you cannot take away the big accomplishment here, and that is a reused booster getting this vehicle into space. It's a big, big accomplishment. So that's a big thing indeed, and something that should not be understated. No, we had no reasons as far as we have questions as to whether or not the door wouldn't open. All we know is that the deployment did not happen, that wasn't going to be possible. I didn't hear anything else. Yeah. I have a team member pointing out that this is not the first time they've had issues with the payload door, and that is true. Let's go ahead and see if there's any other commentary. No. SpaceX has made no other comments about this. The only statement that they've made is that the payload door did not function. So again, up to this point, we have a rocket that hasn't deployed any payload into space yet. So that part of it a little disappointing. But again, on the positive side, reused booster getting the ship into space with the ship not exploding or anything like that. That's a big deal. Plastic, thank you so much. Really, really appreciate it. Yes, strawberries and cream Dr. Pepper, the best soda in the universe. And I should know I have to import this stuff. I've got a couple of shops here in Milton Keynes who import this soda for me because they don't make it here. So in any event, it's, like I say, as I expected when I made my little prediction, there would be mixed results, that it would be better than last time, which it was. The booster got the ship into space, and it was a reused booster. That's a big deal. and it accomplished both of these tasks. But unfortunately, there are still a number of hurdles yet to jump before we even have basic functionality for this rocket, for it to be a practical commercial rocket, meaning that right now, have we lost telemetry? Did somebody say that? I don't know. I don't think we have. Yeah, currently everything's still going as before, and why wouldn't it? Once Starship's in orbit, pressure or in space, precious little can happen to it until it hits the atmosphere again. It's right now, Sir Isaac Newton is in the driver's seat, as 11 from Apollo 13, Lovell from Apollo 13 would have said. So yeah, once that happens, it just kind of keeps going. So hard to say exactly, what issues we may have had in terms of the payload door and in terms of the reused booster. A wise decision to not attempt to catch that booster, because that thing didn't come anywhere close to that. It experienced issues right during that landing burn. So how long is it going to be before we have total reusability on the booster? Hard to say, but at least it worked in terms of getting the ship into space. So that's a big accomplishment, and it could have gone a lot worse than that. Right. Progress is not measured by single events. And I agree with that. It's the nature of iterative design. And on the other side of things, and I always try to talk about both sides of any discussion on my broadcasts, as most of you can probably tell by now, we're up to flight 9 here. We need to be getting to a point where this rocket is functional after all this time and after all these test flights, especially since this rocket has a very important responsibility. I could give a damn if it didn't have any sort of big important goal, near-term goal that it was shooting for. But this thing's supposed to put us back on the moon, according to NASA, by 2027, which at this stage looks pretty much impossible. And now decisions have been made to shut down the only moon-capable rocket, the only rocket capable of getting to cislunar space, SLS. The decision has been made to get rid of that. Granted, ridiculously expensive, expendable, outdated, sure. But again, I hate to sound like I'm sounding critical all the time, because once again, I want to reiterate the things that have gone well here. Quite a few things have gone well. But if we're talking about a rocket that's supposed to replace SLS and put humans on the surface of the moon, I'm not seeing that for a while with this rocket. But when it does its landing, that may change my opinions here in a second. When it comes back down through the atmosphere, and if it carries out a really spectacular soft landing in the water, as these things have done in the past, my viewpoints may change radically there, which we've seen it before. We've seen the orbiter do this thing before. So fingers crossed. Fingers crossed. No, Raptor relight will not be edited out. Right now, they're just not showing us anything because there's nothing really to see. And then once we get to the point to where the Starship starts making its way back through the atmosphere, that's the point to where they'll start showing us some details again. So fingers crossed, guys. We certainly want to see a good reentry. They have scaled back on the tiles to some degree. So right now at 27 minutes, still got a little bit more time before we're going to start seeing atmospheric reentry. Hey, Supax, hope you're doing well, brother. Good to see you again. Jim, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. If Blue Origin will beat SpaceX to the moon, I wouldn't have thought so last year, but they're getting aggressive. If they actually put the Mark 1 Blue Moon lander on the moon before the end of this year, I would say the odds are better than 50% that Blue Origin will beat SpaceX with a human-rated landing on the moon. I'll say that right now. If they can pull that off, the Mark 1 landing this year, because that will demonstrate their capability to land large vehicles on the lunar surface, utilizing New Glenn. But there's still lots of hurdles for them to jump to get to this point, because the Cislunar Transporter, even though that is probably isn't going to require 10 refuelings or anything that ambitious, because the Blue Moon human rated lander is not nearly as big as Starship is, you're going to need refueling in low Earth orbit first in order to fill up its tanks again. You have to do that, number one, and then the Cislunar Transporter has to take that fuel to lunar orbit and transfer the fuel again over to the Blue Moon HLS system. So pretty complicated. And by the way, in my opinion, not a solution that can put humans on the moon all by itself. That's a solution that's more designed to get a human landing system refueled completely in lunar orbit and then to rendezvous with the Orion. I'm sorry, go ahead. Pat Metz, thank you for your super chat, and you've made a lot of good points there. And for those of you who are in the horizontal stream and can't see Pat Metz' comment on that, he's talking about how, with the number of issues that this flight has had, you can't call this a total success. I'd agree with that. There were a number of things that went wrong. And the only moon rocket that's capable of getting to cislunar space is being mothballed prematurely. And I agree. What do we got here? That is we have a fuel tank leak with the orbiter, guys, and it is spinning. We're about to lose the orbiter, guys. We are about to lose the orbiter. It's going to go into the atmosphere, but not in a controlled fashion, folks. I think we may have seen our sharp-eyed teammates who saw what appeared to be venting coming from under the skirt. That may have been what was happening, and we definitely have a fuel leak that has pushed Starship out of position, and it's tumbling towards the atmosphere now. At least we still have cameras in operation. But okay, something else that needs to be taken into consideration here. If you are anywhere in the vicinity of the Indian Ocean and watching this, I strongly recommend that you run outside, because there's a very good chance that you're going to see a spectacular burn up, because this thing is not going to hit the atmosphere in a pretty fashion based on what they're telling us right now. And if you're on an island or anything out in the Indian Ocean, I recommend that maybe you might want to look at taking cover, because we don't know how out of position this thing is, how much that fuel leak has pushed Starship around and out off of its trajectory. The Indian Ocean is a huge place. a huge empty place. So it's highly unlikely that this is going to create any sort of dangerous situation for people on the ground. But again, also, we may have diverted flights as a result of this too. Jeez Louise. Again, an unexpected event here. We definitely had the orbiter pushed into orbit, but based on what we saw, yeah, and well, yeah. Our producer made a comment, and you know what? I would have been with the team that thought that this was going to be successful. So in any event, I was with the rest of you folks that this was, well, there was going to be a mixed result, I guess, is what I thought. And it still is kind of a mixed result. I mean, again, you can't take away from the fact. Pat Metz just made another super chat. Thank you very much. Once again, this is on the vertical side of things. And has said, and I agree with this completely, that based on multiple failures here, Congress needs to keep funding going for SLS for at least another 1 or 2 rockets until we know that Starship is on a promising and aggressive course towards a mature and mature rocket that can do what it's been designed to do. Until we have that, we need the only rocket capable of going to cislunar space funded. That needs to keep going if we want any hope, as Pedmet said, of landing on the moon this decade. I'm afraid I agree completely. This is not what I wanted to see today, obviously, at all. We've got to get this ship into operation, because this is HLS, guys. This is what's supposed to be taking us to the moon. Maybe not the entire job, but definitely a big part of it. So yeah, I mean, there's no easy way to say this. This is disappointing on the 9th flight of this rocket. But once again, first time they were reusing a booster. So there's all kinds of question marks with that. So Farouk, I don't know about sabotage. Boy, whoever it is pretty damn good at it. Go ahead, please continue with your comment. Right. So I had a comment made from one of my team members. I apologize for cutting you off here. Just want to make sure that the viewers know what you're talking about. The booster that was reused this time was outdated, an outdated booster using outdated engines and outdated systems. So the amount of data that they were going to get out of reflying this booster was going to be relatively limited. So the advantages of reusing this booster might not have been all that awesome. So there are some problems here. Jim Yoder, thank you so much for your support. Cancel the exploration upper stage and get more ICPSs and keep flying Block 1 until SpaceX and or Blue Origin can get things up to par. That's not a bad idea, Jim. What he's referring to, by the way, the current version of SLS uses what's called the ICPS, the interim cryogenic propulsion stage, that was only supposed to be used temporarily. And then a more aggressive version used called the exploration upper stage. But maybe we don't need that. Maybe we just need the basic SLS for a couple more flights. Go ahead, producer. Fuel leak resulted in loss of control on the booster and the orbiter, according to SpaceX. Crystal Quark, thank you so much. Really appreciate your support. Okay, so here's the good news. Apparently, it didn't push the booster. The fuel leak did not have a significant enough effect on the trajectory to where the orbiter is going to re-enter in a dangerous place. Near as we can tell, it's going to re-enter the atmosphere in an area of the Indian Ocean that will not be dangerous to anybody on the ground and will not be significantly off target trajectory-wise. That being the case, then commercial flights in the area shouldn't have their course impacted either. So far, so good in terms of that. Again, though, if you live in the vicinity of the Indian Ocean, in other words, if you're in India, Southeast Asia, or perhaps Australia, Western Australia, might want to go outside and look for a spectacular burn up, because this thing is not going to hit the atmosphere cleanly at all, and it's not going to hit the atmosphere taking advantage of its heat tiles. This sucker is going to burn up big time, and create a spectacular view. By the way, producer, let's keep our eyes on X for any signs, any footage of a burn up. Probably is going to be a lot less than that in the Indian Ocean than we get in the Caribbean, but still we could have something. Oh, okay. Team, yes, team. If there's anybody who when this thing starts burning up, if you could check X to see if any footage of Starship burning up becomes available, let us know. And if we can get a hold of it, then we're going to try to bring it to you as close to real time as possible. Jim Yoder, thank you so much. Exploration upper stage not needed if Lunar Gateway is canceled. Yes and no. Exploration upper stage has a number of different potential uses. For one thing, it really increases the payload capability of SLS. Allows for the possibility of carrying carrying crew plus a lot of other stuff, perhaps a module to put on the surface of the moon. Here we go. We're starting to hit the atmosphere at this point, and I would say we're going to lose trajectory. We're going to lose telemetry rather here pretty damn soon, because this thing is not going to hit the atmosphere. And once again, props to SpaceX and Starlink for providing us all of this information in real time. I'll tell you that there are not a lot of companies that would give us this kind of transparency. All right, we're starting to get a glow on the structure, on the stainless steel structure. And I don't think that this thing is going to hold together for very long. Yep. Now you can see the whole structure of the fuselage beginning to burn up here. Oh, wow. I'm not sure if we've ever seen anything like that before. Now, there's no point in trying to correct at this stage. If totally lost, and they may be out of fuel. Oh, man. Here we go. Oh, wow. Look at that. Oh, geez. Spectacular and sad all at the same time. All at the same time. Yes, Farouk, to answer your question, yes, I will have a video about a space lift, space elevator soon. Definitely. Yeah, it's almost certainly rolling. Look at that. Boy, spectacular footage from SpaceX. Again, props to them, because there are not a lot of companies that would show us this. So many companies would just be so horrified by something like this. They wouldn't want to show the public, investors, whatever this. And And instead, they're showing us this moment in all of its ugly glory. And it looks like we may have already lost it. We'll see. Nope, here it goes again. Boy, those Starlink cameras must be made out of there we go. Amazing. Just amazing that these cameras are still working. Like I say, they must be made out of neutronium, as they say in Star Trek. Super impressive. Boy, look at that plasma. Jeez Louise. Okay. Once again, we'll see if we have camera. Yep, it's still going. These cameras are amazing. Jeez Louise, who knows? We'll see. But Jason, you're right now, man. You're right now, and probably that's going to be the case for a while, unfortunately. Looks like they may have cut us off at this point. Yeah, it appears that we have lost connection. Once again, folks, keep your eyes on X for any footage. Again, there's not many people in the Indian Ocean. There's somebody in Saipan who's been watching. He may see something, but so far we're not getting any burn up footage that I can see. Let's go ahead and check. So far, we're not seeing much of anything out. Nothing yet. Once again, this is to be expected. The Indian Ocean is not a heavily populated area. Go ahead. Sorry. Oh, wow. It came back. We got video back for just a second. Unbelievable. We're actually still seeing some footage. So yes, it hasn't burnt up yet, obviously, because the rocket is still there. Holy majoli. What's the altitude now? That's unbelievable that those cameras still work. It's mind-boggling. Just mind-boggling. That is super impressive. Oh, look at those flaps. Ugh. Oh, they're falling away. Look at it, just starting to dissolve. And once again, that demonstrates to you just how ugly things can be when you hit the atmosphere and you are not properly oriented to where your heat shield is pointed towards the atmosphere. It's a bit terrifying when it comes right down to it. If you consider how easily this could have happened to Apollo astronauts, or to anybody re-entering the atmosphere in Crew Dragon or the space shuttle. You know, it just takes a tiny miscalculation. And if the ship and the heat shield are not perfectly oriented, that's what's going to happen. That's what's going to happen to your rocket. It's a bit frightening. But anyway, it's also good to see that these folks are trying to maintain a positive attitude, smiles on their faces, that sort of thing. That's a good thing to see. Happy to see that from these folks, because I feel for them. I know in their hearts they are not liking this. There are just too many. There were some things about this flight that went well, but overall there was a lot of stuff that didn't. Let's go ahead. We're gonna spend another couple of minutes just making sure that we don't have any burn up footage. Although, well, we definitely have. Yeah, yeah. We're gonna go ahead and keep watching for a moment, just to make sure that because we still had cameras showing us stuff, but what we didn't, but there were. All right. All right. We've got some footage coming in right now of a Starship reentry, not the whole burn up yet, but we may have it in a second. I would say folks in Western Australia have a decent chance of seeing some of this stuff, or perhaps even Madagascar. All right, we're going to see. We're going to try to plug in a picture for you folks of possible reentry footage over the Indian Ocean. We're going to see whether or not this was apparently just uploaded. We're doing our best to bring you coverage of this event in real time, or as close to real time as is possible. So our producer, who somehow manages to do these things as quickly as he does, we'll see whether or not he can get this posted here. We have nearly as many observers in this region. Okay, there we are. Okay, so there's our first view of what looks like the reentry, Starship reentry beginning. Again, that is something we can probably expect, because at the time when this photo was taken, it could be that that there hadn't been a complete breakup of the craft just yet. Still waiting to see if there's any other footage or any other pictures besides that, but that's what we've got thus far of a reentry and burn up beginning. That may have been taken from a ship. I can't think of too many other places where an overhead view would have been seen. There are some islands though in that region, so possibly. All right, we may have footage here, guys. We're going to try to check it to make sure that it's legitimate. All right, we've got another post of possibly re-entry footage right now. We're going to spool that up here. Go ahead and have a look and see if again, we're trying to confirm that this is legitimate. Again, if you're in Australia, look west. If you are in Western Australia, that is. If you're in Eastern Australia, you may not be able to see it at all. If you're in India, look south to the... Okay, here we go. Let's have a look. Here we go. All right, so here's re-entry footage, some of the first re-entry footage that we got. All right. This is a shot from Namibia, Africa. So East Africa, and they caught it just at the horizon, it looks like. A very impressive shot from Namibia. So SpaceX has ended their feed, just so we're clear. But at the same time, we're going to take a quick look to see if there's anything else. But very sharp-eyed observer. And what was it again? Hey, why not? Let's go ahead and have a look at it. We got some other footage here. This probably is going to be more comical than anything, I suppose. But yeah, let's have a look. Oh, okay. Somebody claims to have seen a Klingon warbird in the SpaceX footage or something like a Klingon warbird. And let's go ahead and skip over that. We always see that stuff. And I take very little of it seriously from space footage, unless I've had a long time to examine it. But hey, it's always fun to look at stuff like that. But the main thing we're looking for is any footage, any burn up footage. And right now, apparently, we're not getting much. And again, this is something to be expected. I mean, the fact that the only shot that we have is from Namibia, again, indicates just how limited the number of observers there were at the time of this. So we're going to go ahead and wrap up our broadcast at this point, folks. Although I will continue to keep my eyes open for anything else, and definitely bring you that footage as rapidly as I possibly can. Here in just a few hours, actually, shoot. Yeah, in a half an hour, in half an hour, Elon Musk is going to be making a presentation about Starship, and its path, yeah, and its pathway towards maturity. I'll be interested to see what he has to say about this stage, and this flight in its development. My first impressions, I mean, super positive that a reused booster, even though it was an old and outdated booster, a reused booster managed to get the ship into space. I mean, that's a big accomplishment. But in every other respect, this flight did not go as we would have wanted. There was obviously a fuel leak right from the beginning. Multiple fuel leaks, it appears, that led to the loss of the booster and the orbiter. And again, I think we got a long, hard road ahead of us before Starship reaches maturity. Also, without question, this is going to create a mishap report with the FAA. This is definitely a mishap-related incident. The booster running into problems, that's to be expected. The orbiter experiencing problems while in flight in space is not to be expected. So there'll be an FAA mishap report as well. So again, do I feel that Starship will eventually be a huge revolutionary rocket that will propel mankind into the solar system? Yes, I do feel that way. To one degree or another, Starship will be able to do these things. Is it something that's going to happen in the very near future? No. So this is the wrong time for us to be getting rid of our only functional moon rocket. And that, for all of its flaws, is SLS. Thank you very much for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. And until next time, stay angry about space.